I didn't even know about buying fights until I came down here, probably 10 years ago. And I was like, I mean,
Oh, wow.
you can go to Puerto Rico and just just pay for basically a cab driver to step in, and you get it goes in your box rack. Really? That's a real thing.
That initial conversation with the first promoter, that was you negotiating yourself onto the card and saying that you would pay for the fights
No, no, I
or
said
pay
that I
the
was going to sell.
fighter
I said
or
I was going to sell tickets. I said I was
okay.
going to. I had a guarantee minimum ticket sales, which for whatever I don't remember what the numbers were, but I'm sure whatever that minimum was, dollar amount was going to cover at least my purse, if not my purse and my opponent's. So maybe it was like, oh, you got to sell 50 tickets, and it's 50 tickets, maybe they're $25 or whatever the case may be. So it's going to cover some portion of the cost of what my bout was going to cost the promoter. Correct, right?
Right.
So it's my purse, my opponent's purse. It's travel for my opponent if he's coming in from anywhere, and then whatever transportation or hotels were needed for the opponent. That's why finding local opponents is great because they're cheap. You don't have to fly them in. You don't have to put them up.
Yeah.
And also, guys in my situation, I end up fighting a lot of really tough guys because tough guys are cheaper. Because tough guys will be like, I could beat that white boy. I'll take that. I'll take that fight.
Right.
And actually, I got a lot of fights like that. Guys who watch me in the gym, like in Galices, whatever. I was like, I want to fight Chris Algeri, and he's been in the gym. I can take him, and then they would take the fight, and I'd whoop them, and then it would be cheap. It would be cheap for the promoter, but it was tough for me because I had to fight a lot of tough guys and guys who really thought they could win. It's whereas sometimes you have other guys who are actually bought and paid for. Well, they're jobbers. This is what they do. They fight 3 times a month, and they
Yeah.
show up and they get beat up by guys who are 5-0 and 10-0 and 15-0. And their job essentially becomes don't get knocked out so I can fight next weekend.
Yeah.
And for them, it's a job. They're getting paid to go out there and fight. They obviously they're some of those guys are pretty good. A lot of times they're very crafty. They have a ton of experience. They know how not to get hurt. They know how not to get knocked out. They know how not to get stopped. Because that is their job, is to be able to work every weekend or as many weekends as they can.
Yeah.
So very, very, very different situation the way that I came up in terms of that. So for me, that's the other portion I don't think we ever really hear about, because when you hear about like these top promotional companies, when they have these big signings of like a guy coming out of the Olympics, like Shakur Stevenson or Keyshawn Davis, you think about Top Rank, you think about these big promotions. And they're going to just set up opponents, and no, they don't have to worry. The promoter worries about that. They get the right guy. They want their guy to shine. They know the investment is there. There was probably a signing bonus for that fighter anyway to get him to sign your promotional contract. Now we're going to set him up. We're going to get him to a reasonable record, 10-0, 15-0, and then we're going to put him into a big fight, make our money back. A guy like me, you don't really hear about because it doesn't really happen that much. It's very old school. I call it grassroots because I had to do this in my hometown. I had to sell tickets. I had to run around. I had to. I actually, because the advent of social media, Facebook came onto the scene when I was in college. And remember how you could make event pages?
Yeah.
I would make Chris Algeri's next bout, and I would invite everybody that was on my Facebook page, and I would sell tickets through that, and I would set up. How many tickets you need? They tell me. They put in an order, and then I would do a meet and greet somewhere local, and people would come, and we would exchange. They would give me cash. I'd give them tickets. I'd see on fight night, sell T-shirts and whatnot. But oftentimes it was literally me, the guy who's fighting, doing this. Fight after fight, year after year. I did it through my kickboxing career, so I had an idea going into my boxing how it was going to work out.
So you were hustling. You were hustling back, when you first started, just in combat sports in general. Then.
Yeah, always. I mean, kickboxing, there's no money. So
Right.
I was doing that basically just so I could get these fights. Flying guys from England, flying guys from South Africa, flying guys from Germany was expensive. And promoters at a small local kickboxing show didn't want to do that.
Yeah. What made you finally do the transition? Was it just all financially based?
For the sponsors? Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
would put like
you cut out, so I missed that part. Go ahead and say that again.
Oh, so yeah, the sponsor, I would get sponsors that would, I put their logo on my T-shirts, and I would sell them. They go on my trunks or whatever. And essentially, they whatever money they would give, they basically just give it to the promoter. They would
Right.
sponsor the show. They would get banners on the ring and whatnot, but it would get the main event opponent in, which was this world class guy who was going to come from another country who could fight me.
Right.
Um, because I was very popular in kickboxing as well. I was selling out shows on Long Island back when I was 19, 20 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
like I said, I had that built-in fan base. Um, so when I came into boxing, the promoters wanted to put me on shows. I got 5 fights my first year, and it's having no manager, doing it myself, and had no lawyer, no manager, didn't even have an accountant then, and it was just me and my team, my traders. Tim Lane, rest in peace,
Right.
was helping me at the time because he was a former kickboxer as well and knew how this worked in terms of selling tickets. And we just hustled. We trained, we hustled, we sold tickets, and we fought, and we won.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your case, and maybe that's the case is that an East Coast, that old school mentality where you guys are uh, putting all the money together or selling tickets, be able to get on these cards? Because I noticed that on the West Coast, a lot of the guys will just go down to Mexico and they'll straight up pay.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it as well, to where you have guys who don't have a built-in fan base like you have to go another route where they're putting together, they're matching up with promoters down in Mexico, and then paying $1,000 or something like that to be able to fly in a guy or fight a guy out of Tijuana. And I know I guess the known guy to do that is Devin Haney, but there's been plenty of guys who have gone down to Mexico and do that, essentially paying for their first 10, 15 fights just to get their records built up.
So that's the third route, the one I didn't mention. So I mentioned the big signing, right? I mentioned the Shakur Stevenson, the Keyshawn Davis, the guys that are coming into the pro ranks already known, and they get signed by a promoter, and the promoter worries about the promoters, the opponents, excuse me. Got a guy like me, grassroots, has to do it on his own, and then there's that guy. So there's the third route where maybe they had some good amateur success, maybe they have a manager. Maybe they have some good sponsors. Mostly it's the manager who's going to pay for these kinds of things. Someone who knows the sport, knows about boxing. And they go, hey, we're going to build your record up. We're going to get you to a good place. And then we're going to set you up in a tough fight if you win, and we keep going. So like you said, in the East Coast, we go down to Dominican Republic. We go down to Puerto Rico. We go down to Colombia. And then if you want to take it to tougher fights, you go to Mexico, because those guys are oftentimes, even the opponents in Mexico are tougher than the guys you find in Colombia and DR. And then you go to like Tennessee, and you get those kinds of fights where the commissions are looser, and they can set up these kind of bought fights that are much easier, where guys aren't really there to win.
Yeah.
And then you get to a certain point, you get to 10-0, and it's like, all right, cool, we're gonna go put you in with another potential prospect on undercard of one of these big promoter shows. And if you win, sometimes you get looked at for a contract. If you lose, the other guy probably gets looked at for a contract.
Right.
So that's the other route that you can do. I didn't come from a boxing background. My trainers were kickboxing guys. We didn't know how this worked. We didn't want a manager. I don't want to be beholden to anyone. I didn't want to have any kind of sponsors, long-term sponsors. I didn't want managers. I didn't want anyone to come and bring in their money that I had to pay back later. That was just my own mental thing that I didn't think was a good idea. And I just had an idea that the sport could get really ugly really fast. So I just kept it in-house the best that I could. And we did it the way that we were able to do it. I didn't even know about buying fights until I came down here, probably 10 years ago. And I was like, I mean, you can go to Puerto Rico and just pay for basically a cab driver to step in, and you get it goes in your box rec. Really? That's a real thing? Yeah. I had no clue. Like I said, I wasn't with boxing people. My trainers didn't know the sport any more than X's and O's. They didn't know the business, I should say.
Right.